Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning in to this training session on the Monidrop IV Fluid Monitor. My name is Jamie Munro and I am the Sales Manager for Pentland Medical and also the Product Specialist for Monidrop in the UK. Just to give you a little bit of an overview of what the training session is going to include, I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of background on Monidrop before I show you how it physically works, how you attach it to the drip set and what information you actually get from the Monidrop screen. I'll also talk about what fluids and medications can be used with the assistance of Monidrop and why you would use Monidrop instead of a volumetric pump, for example. At the end, I'll talk about some of the add-ons that are available for the Monidrop, such as the IV screen remote monitoring software platform, as well as our special IV giving sets. For your information, this is a pre-recorded presentation, so you won't be able to ask me any questions during the presentation, but I will have my contact details on the final slide, and you can feel free to contact me at any time with any questions or if you want to discuss anything relating to the Monidrop device. There are usually some handouts that I like to give out when I'm doing training in a live scenario, so do feel free to contact me to get a copy of this documentation. So just to start, a little bit of background on the Monidrop device, the Monidrop W, which is the only version that's now available, that superseded the original version of Monidrop earlier in 2020. Just to give you some idea of what the difference is between Monidrop W and the original version of the device. The original version was designed more as a standalone unit. It had a touchscreen and you could program in what infusion speeds you would like running, and it would rely on audible alarms to alert you if the infusion started running too fast or too slow. With the Monidrop W device, much of that functionality has been transferred across to the IV screen software application. So this is optional. You can use Monidrop as a standalone, but it's a bit more limited, and we would advise that the full benefit and the full functionality of the Monidrop system can be realized when you use it in conjunction with the software. Some other differences, the old version had a touchscreen, which made it much more expensive. So the new version of the Monidrop device is about half the price it was before, which always goes down very well. And also the new version has the addition of a backlight, which is very popular for nurses working during the night time, for example. We do have several UK reference sites, large acute hospitals using the Monidrop device. There are about 5 at the time of recording, with several other trial sites ongoing at the moment. And that's additional to all the reference sites we have in the community care setting, where a lot of places using it when they're doing care in the community and home care for patients, where an infusion pump is just not practical a lot of the time. So what is the purpose of Monidrop and how does it work? Well, first of all, it's a monitor of IV fluids from a traditional gravity IV set commonly used in the healthcare setting. It's designed to reduce medication errors, which can occur when nurses try to manually calculate the speed of infusion just by counting the drops and timing it and trying to work out the speed from that way. So Monidrop will do that for you basically. The top arrow on the current slide here is pointing to the infrared sensors, and these are what actually register each individual drop coming down the drip chamber. Once it's had about 3 drops coming down, it can then calculate the speed at which they're falling and display that information on the screen. So the second arrow here is pointing to the latch mechanism, and that's what you use to physically attach the device to the drip chamber. It's more or less universal. I've not seen any drip sets where it doesn't physically attach. It's designed to work with a drop size, of 20 drops per mil, which is by far the most commonly used. So just based on that drop size, it can tell you the speed and the total volume infused. It's a very simple device to use. There are only 2 buttons, and that's what the bottom arrow is pointing to at the bottom of the device there. So you have the on and off switch, pretty self-explanatory. You just hold that down for a couple of seconds to turn the device either on or off. And also we have the alarm button. So there are 3 audible alarms on the Monidrop device. There's an occlusion device, so if the speed of the infusion is running below 6 mils per hour, it will sound off an alert. Now the button there, that can actually be turned on or off, so you can choose whether you want the occlusion alarm to be on. The other alarms are the battery alarm, so if the battery is needing a charge, it will alert you to that, and also the steady flow of fluid. So if there's a constant flow above 1200 mils per hour, it will immediately alert you to that fact with the audible alarm. But generally speaking, the idea behind it is to reduce the audible alarms, and most of the notifications would be on the screen if you were using this with the IV screen remote monitoring software application. So moving on to the screen display, there's 3 arrows here, but I've actually, you'll notice on the very top of the device there's some very small little logos. They're pretty self-explanatory, such as the battery life, the Wi-Fi, which is an indicator if you're using it in conjunction with the remote monitoring software application. The top arrow is pointing to the total time of infusion. It's really since when you turn the device on, the timer starts, but that can also be used to tell you how long the infusion's been running for. The second one there is probably the one you're going to pay most attention to, and that is the current speed of infusion in milliliters per hour. And that's more or less an instant reflection. So if you make an adjustment on the roller clamp, it will more or less instantly reflect that on the screen. What we advise doing is when you need to make an adjustment, is make the adjustment, wait for 3 drops to fall down the drip chamber, and then see what speed you're at there. If you need to make another adjustment, do the same again. So make the adjustment, wait 3 drops, and then decide if you need to make further adjustments. The bottom arrow there is pointing to the accumulation of the total volume infused. So again, pretty self-explanatory, just shows you how much fluids have been infused in this particular infusion. So what fluids can be administered with the assistance of the Monidrop device? Usually when I do this in a live setting, I would have a copy of our fluids and medications guide. If you get in touch with me, I'll be happy to send you a copy of this. It's pretty comprehensive, just a list of fluids and medications that we would deem acceptable for infusion with the assistance of Monidrop. Obviously, that would need to be reviewed by your pharmacy team and your nursing team, and they would have the final say on what is acceptable to be infused with the assistance of Monidrop. Just to give you a rough idea, blood products, nutrients and antibiotics are ideal. Blood products I've highlighted in particular, basically because there's a lot of research out there that shows that certain pumps, the pumping mechanism on the tubing, can actually have a damaging effect on the quality of the blood product, on the red blood cells in particular. So for that reason, a lot of places won't use certain volumetric pumps when they're infusing blood products. And that's really where we feel we have a good advantage, because if you're having to use a gravity set to infuse your blood products, then Monidrop's only going to make that safer. So as I said, the fluids and medications guide, which is pretty comprehensive, I'll be happy to send you a copy of that if you get in touch and request that. A question I'm commonly asked, why would I use Monidrop instead of a pump? So yeah, there's a few reasons. It really depends from hospital to hospital. Some hospitals do have a lot of volumetric pumps and availability is not a problem. But for some hospitals, it is a problem. They don't have a huge inventory of pumps, and they need to be kept for areas where they're most critical. So that is where Monidrop is ideal, because it can really relieve the pressure on pumps. We're not saying it's a direct replacement for a volumetric pump, but if they're used correctly, they can really reduce the overall reliance on the pumps, and allow you to keep them for the areas that are where they're needed most. So yeah, they're not always available, and they're not always practical pumps. And to give an example of where they might not be practical, this is where we've had a lot of success in the community and home care settings, where it's just not possible to take a pump out to the patient's home. And Monidrop, by comparison, is very simple, very portable, easy to use device that just clips onto your IV set. It's not heavy or anything like that, so it's just much more practical. Another reason, and maybe this would be if you had an abundance of volumetric pumps, the cost of using pumps. So not only is the capital cost of a pump much more expensive than a Monidrop device would be, there's also the consumable element of that. So if you're using every time you use an infusion pump, you have to use a special pump giving set. Now they typically cost in the region of £2 to £3, whereas if you compare that to a standard gravity set, they're usually in the region of 40 to 50 pence. So if you're able to use a gravity set instead of a pump set, then there's good savings to be made there. If you mount that up over the course of months and over the course of a year, that it's quite considerable savings that could be made when you're able to use a gravity set instead of a pump set. Another benefit might be just the overall simplicity. Most nurses are trained quite well on how to use volumetric pumps, but some newer nurses coming in, for example, they can be quite difficult to set up if you don't know what you're doing. Monidrop, by comparison, just very easy. Once you're trained up on how to attach it to the giving set, it's just very simple to use, and as I say, much more practical than a volumetric pump. Doesn't weigh anything or anything like that. The final point on this slide is really just on the maintenance, maybe more for your med physics team. Volumetric pumps are frequently breaking down, frequently requiring maintenance, because they have a lot of mechanical parts, and yeah, they do require frequent planned preventative maintenance. They are frequently breaking down, and this all costs money. It all costs money in both the time spent on it and all the parts that are required. Monidrop, by comparison, very straightforward. It only needs a battery change every couple of years, every 2 years. There are spare parts available if it does need to be repaired, but by comparison to a pump, much reduced maintenance and repair work is required. So this little infographic on the screen now is just to really show how we try to position Monidrop in the current marketplace of infusion delivery devices. So currently, well, before Monidrop anyway, there was really two ways of delivering IV fluids, and that was your gravity IV set, where you have to count the drops manually to see what speed it's going at, and that's obviously very prone to errors. The only other alternative is if you have a volumetric pump, which, as I said on the previous slide, they're not always practical, they're not always available. So with Monidrop, we're trying to position that as a link in between that. So use it to increase the nurse's confidence with administering IV fluids with gravity, and also reduce the overall reliance on pumps. And by doing that, you're going to increase efficiencies and also reduce your costs as well. It's also going to vastly increase the patient safety. As I say, when you're actually having to count the drops manually when you're doing it via gravity, this is very prone to errors. There's a lot of research out there that shows how common errors are, and also something that Monidrop will reflect is the inconsistency of some of the IV giving sets, which I'll get onto a little bit later. Well, here we go now, in fact, on the IV giving sets. So there are two types really. At the moment, you have by far the most common ones are the manual gravity sets, which just work by you adjust the roller clamp, and that will determine the speed of the infusion. There's a huge number of different manufacturers and makes of giving sets, and a lot of varying quality as well. Some of them are not very accurate, some of them are much better. Generally speaking, they're not very good at holding a consistent speed. So if you set up a speed what you think is, for example, 100 mils per hour, you can go away and even without much intervention, such as the patient going for a walk or bending their arm or whatever, the speed can change just because they're not very consistent, they're not very reliable in that sense. And this is something that Monidrop will really reflect when you start to use it. We've had negative feedback, some people saying, well, I set it at 100 mils per hour, when I came back it was running at 80, and our answer to that is Monidrop is only going to reflect what's actually happening. So it's going to happen whether you have Monidrop or not. It's just that it's more obvious when you use it with a Monidrop, and it highlights these problems more. The second set I've highlighted here, I actually have one with me now, is the dial flow giving sets. Some of you may be aware of them, some of you may not. In a lot of hospitals, these are actually forbidden now, and that's because there's a lot of research out there that shows how inaccurate that they are. And again, this will be highlighted by Monidrop if you were ever using one of these type of sets with Monidrop. The idea is that you set the speed of infusion just by going by the dial, However, a lot of research out there, and I can show this when I do this live as well, is when you actually set a certain speed, I'm going to use 100 miles per hour again, what you actually get is something like 120. So it's always different to what you think you've set on the dial. And for that reason, a lot of hospitals have forbidden their use. However, there is a positive side to these type of sets, and that is that they hold a very consistent speed in comparison to the gravity sets with roller clamp. So that the consistency of speed is very important, but obviously if you're going by what's on the dial, you think you've set 100 miles per hour, but what you're actually getting is 120 miles per hour. However, on the positive side, it's going to stay at 120 miles per hour. So why am I telling you this? It's not the best picture on this current slide because they're not quite available yet, but they will be later in 2020. And these are what we call the economic flow regulators, and these are going to be designed specifically to work with the Monidrop infusion monitor. Essentially what they are is a dial set, so they use the same mechanism as a standard dial set, so it gives you that much improved consistency of speed. However, what we've done is we've removed the numbers from the dial. So instead, you would take your reading, your speed from the screen, the Monidrop screen. So it will give you a much more accurate indication of what speed you're getting without the problems of the other dial set, and with the benefit of having that much improved consistency of speed. There is going to be two types of set available. We're going to have one for basic fluids and medications, and another one specifically for blood giving sets. So watch this space. These will be available very shortly, and we will be doing a big push on them at the time. The next add-on I want to talk about is the remote monitoring. I've mentioned it several times throughout the presentation, but the Monidrop W device has really been designed to work with the IV screen remote monitoring software application. So the idea behind it is that you could monitor all infusions from a central computer or mobile device. So it could work with a laptop, one of your ward computers, a mobile phone, a tablet, etc. And this, as well as giving you that efficiency of being able to monitor, if you can imagine in a ward with 10 beds, for example, you could have each of those patients, 10 patients, being monitored with a Monidrop device, and you would have all that information just on one screen. So if an infusion starts to run too fast or too slow for whatever reason, it will alert you on the screen, and you can actually go and change that without having to check each individual device. So I can actually give you a quick demonstration. If I just come out of this slideshow, I can actually set it up here. So this is just to give you an idea of what the IV screen actually does. So there's about 10 here. So if I click into this, I can say, we've got John Smith, or you don't have to use patient names. I'm just giving an example. He's in room 1, bay 2. And that information comes up on the screen, and you can say for John, I'm just going to close that one down. You want to infuse, say, 1,000 mils, and you want to do that over 4 hours. And what it automatically calculates for you here is the desired infusion rate. So you want that to run at 250 mils per hour. So if you see here, this is just a dummy example. I don't actually have a live demonstration to show you on this recording, but if you can just imagine here on this second little bit here, the information it's giving you is that infusion is currently running at 180 mils per hour. Our target speed is 250 mils per hour, but you'll see that it's highlighted in green here, and that's because it's within an acceptable parameter. So I believe it's plus or minus 30%. So if the infusion suddenly started running a bit lower than that, say 150, that would breach the 30% limit, and it would start showing yellow, as is indicated on the one I'm circling now, and also on the left here. So if you can imagine having that information at your fingertips, if the infusion speed needs to be changed, you know that you need to go to John Smith's bed, and you need to make that adjustment on the giving set. So just much more functionality can be realized. When you're using the device as a standalone unit, it will display the current infusion speeds on the actual device, but this is where the real benefit of the system is, because you can actually choose what speed you want it running at, and get alerts, visual alerts, when it starts running too fast or too slow. So just to finish off, I'd usually do a demonstration of the device here. So I have one here. I can show you. Hopefully you can see the information on the screen, but as I mentioned earlier, it's very simple. You have the on and off button in the middle and the alarm button just here, and the occlusion alarm can be turned on or off as I'm demonstrating here. That's all you can do with that button. Very straightforward. If we just go back to the main screen here, so I'll just come out here. It's very simple just to attach it to the drip set, and once you start the infusion running, you probably can't see on the screen, but it's actually giving me the current infusion speed that we're doing here. When I'm doing this in a live demonstration, I like to give the nurses a shot to actually practice attaching it to the giving set, which can sometimes be problematic for first-time users. But yeah, just to show you exactly how it works as well. So that is more or less the presentation over. Just on the final slide here is all of my contact details. So you have my name, my email address, my mobile phone number. If you want any further information, there is a lot of information on our website, www.pentlandmedical.co.uk. There's our main office line. You can speak to me or any of my colleagues. And that's our company LinkedIn profile as well. We're always posting on there about Monidrop and some of our other products. But yeah, I'm happy to hear from you. Please do get in touch if there's anything I can help you with. If there's any questions, which I'm sure there will be, do get in touch. I'm more than happy to help you out. So thanks for your attention. Thanks for listening to this presentation, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.